Hello everyone, welcome to GoTarryn TV. I am Dr. T, PhD, the prodigy of sports psychology, here about to welcome a wonderful guest who's also here in Atlanta, Georgia, Ms. Haley Helveston. And before Haley returns back here on to GoTarryn TV, I'd like to ask everyone out there, if you please be so kind as to like this video, leave us a comment, share it with all of your friends and family, because today is going to be a very exciting episode. I brought Haley back on here. We talked to her last month. Now this time, I wanted to kind of delve into her kind of knowing what she does, what she's about, all of her programs, and kind of share that with everybody, kind of as a refresher, because she's going to go over some terms and some other things that maybe some of us aren't familiar with. Me, certainly. So I'm very curious to talk to her about that and just kind of pick her brain and see what she's been up to and see what she's got scheduled for the upcoming summer season that we're having that's upon us. So it's going to be a really cool time to just catch up with Haley and see how her life is going. And we'll have her right here on GoTarryn TV momentarily. And remember, with GoTarryn Health and Fitness, it's your time, it's your investment, it's your life. We'll be right back.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Oh, my pleasure, Haley. It's always fun doing these with you, and I appreciate it. You know, we chatted last month, and I know that topic last month was more centered around now that vaccines were distributed and people were coming out of their shell, and you know, we're coming out of hopefully this pandemic and getting kind of normal. It seems that way, especially with Atlanta, the way traffic's been. Have you noticed the traffic a little heavier here?
Oh, yeah, it seems like everybody's out and about, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good sign, isn't it? You're right. Yeah, that's a good point. And you know, here we are, Haley, and we're talking as we record this so early. And again, I appreciate you being able to do this at your busy schedule and your time. And I wanted to tell you before we were recording, I did see a few recent articles on you on both the Shout Out Atlanta page and Voyage Atlanta, and just so you've been keeping really busy. And last time I talked to you, I know that you were getting your programs back and up and running and everything, and just business as normal. So. For the benefit of those who haven't met you and say this is their first time watching you, can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Haley, and what it means to be a sex relationship coach, and what is your guide to love?
Okay, yeah. So, what I do is I help people have healthy relationships with themselves and other people, depending on whether they're in a relationship or they want to attract a partner.
Hmm.
And a lot of it's to do with sexuality and with their health and their bodies. Because the thing is, like, we weren't really taught how to have healthy relationships with our bodies. We were
True.
taught to hate our bodies, really.
Yeah.
So,
You know, that's a good point too. It was so taboo growing up. Like, for example, as we're kids, and yeah, you know, you're in the locker room, for example. I know this happens in the guys' locker room, and you're naked, and everyone's scared, and like putting the towel around, and it's so taboo to be naked around each other. Do you see that as something just as a cultural thing? Because in other countries, I observe it's really not that way, is it?
yeah, it's really weird. I was talking to my sister about this, how we have, think about it. They show so much violence on TV and they show all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But they never show actual sexuality. It's always like limited.
Hmm.
And I think that that's detrimental. And I've even done podcast episodes on this, how, teaching our kids the actual names of body parts, not just a nickname or whatever.
Oh, that's a good, yeah, good point. You know, when you look at different countries, for example, I know over in the UK, they have the opposite viewpoint. They're very free and open about nudity and sex and things of that nature. But when it comes to violence, for example, there are things that they would censor that we look at as Americans, like, oh wow, you know, somebody getting hit by a car or somebody pulling out a gun and shooting somebody. That's very forbidden there. So it's definitely, you know, something opposite that they have in that perspective. But you know, yeah, you're right about the whole names, you know, the nicknames growing up as kids, and then it's almost like, you know, you're not supposed to say a name. Where does that kind of derive from? What approach maybe should be taken to, you know, maybe in school? Should they just start there with young adolescents and just let them know what the actual names are?
I mean, I think they should start in school, but I also think it's starting in like with parents with kids,
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
like just openly talking about what the names are.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I mean, that's a good point, you know. Speaking of names, Haley, I wanted to ask you about some of the things that, you know, on recent blog posts, and I've seen you've been doing a lot of podcasting. And one of the things that I wanted to go over, and I didn't get to last time, we ran out of time, but I made notes last time to just kind of talk about some of the names and terms that people might not know. For example, the power of de-armoring. Can you kind of explain what that is to people who haven't heard what that is before?
Yeah, great question. I'm really glad you're asking these. Okay, so because that's my that's my problem. I'm sure you do with this too, with what you're doing. When you've been doing something for so long, I automatically assume people know and they don't know.
Right, right. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, okay, so de-armoring is a process where a lot of women, like maybe she's had sexual trauma or maybe she just doesn't feel anything in her body, right?
Mm.
If you've been in survival mode, fight or flight mode for so long,
Uh-huh.
it just takes a while to feel something. So de-armoring is a process where you get a dildo. It's like a, plastic one or a glass one, and
Hmm.
you literally go through, you stick it in your vagina,
Uh-huh.
and you go through like different spots that are numb, and you make them not numb, right? So it's a
Yeah.
process of really, just develop. Basically, it's all about developing a healthy relationship with your body.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'd never heard that before, that term. And you know, even like for example, the dildo, that's something that haha, like people will kind of snicker at, and there's jokes and such. But
Hmm.
really, you know, when it comes to your profession and helping women and empower their bodies and their sexuality, I mean, we're talking about real serious things, aren't we?
Yeah, definitely. Hello. I had a woman tell me once, this was a few years ago when I just started, that
Yeah.
she said that she faked all of her orgasms with her partner. Like, that's actually a really big deal.
Mm, mm, mm. Did she fake them because you think, did she say to you that she couldn't reach it, or did she just not get in the mood and didn't want to achieve it, or what was her take on why? Because I'm sure she's not the only woman doing that, but why would a woman, you know, in her example, like do that? Just was it just out of choice, or just?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's older. And so it's like, maybe she was taught that her needs don't matter and she's taught to please her partner,
Mm,
And so I
mm.
think it's so important to really educate men and women to honor their needs and then to speak up to them. I mean, speak up for them.
You know, that's another good point too, Haley. I wanted to ask you about because you mentioned about maybe she's wanting to please her partner. Maybe it's not important to please herself, is what she was taught. But a lot of women almost have that mindset of becoming what you say a savior. I've noticed this on your posts, like in terms of wanting to save a relationship, so they look for a man so they can help them be better. What's the dangers of that? And can you kind of go and elaborate on what that kind of means?
Yeah, so I think a lot of women, it's like the people pleasing being a martyr. And I've seen this so much. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of women deal with this, where they basically sacrifice all their needs to their partner.
Hmm.
But then it doesn't matter if you're in a relationship, you might as well be single if you're never going to meet any of your needs.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, that kind of goes to what you were saying too, in terms of a woman's pleasure being their responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. But again, yes, it is her responsibility. But
Hmm.
like a woman told me the other day, yeah, it's my responsibility, but I also want my partner to care and acknowledge those needs too.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because she was with a guy who they were in a sexless relationship and
Mm.
he didn't want to work on it.
Oh, interesting. Wow. Well, then it definitely takes two for sure. So we're talking
Yeah.
about, yeah, reciprocation. And that's so important, you know, like you notice relationships where one's more of the giving partner and the other one kind of just isn't there. And we see that a lot too, don't we? Like when, for example, one of the partners is out working all day and then the other one is, you know, whatever, hanging out at home or going with her girlfriends. They almost become very distant in that factor. So things like, for example, being aroused or stimulated or, you know, things like that might be hard. So you had mentioned to women at one point, quote, do more of what turns you on. What are some examples of that for women that they could do to build their sexual energy?
Yeah, so I think that that is in terms of all areas of life,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But specifically to what we're talking about, it's do you know your body? It's self pleasure. It's maybe starting a breast massage practice. It's just developing and connecting with your body.
Yeah, yeah, that's such a good point too, you know. Because, women, let's face it, they probably have, I'm guessing, for the most part, just generalizing, kind of lower self-esteem, lower self-confidence issues than guys do.
I think it's like now that I've been in this work, I think it's equal to be honest
Oh,
with
okay.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 'cause it's really funny. I was interviewed on a podcast the other day in Australia,
Yeah.
and the guy was talking about how he was like, a lot of things you say, they're for men too. And I
Mm-hmm.
have a call today with a man, so I think it really, I'll probably end up, just really generalizing, saying men and women in post because both genders are dealing with these issues, right? Of over lack of self worth, self confidence, not speaking up for their needs.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah, good point. And the other thing, Haley, I wanted to ask you about too, you post a lot of very interesting looking paintings and pictures, and they're just really cool. They're fascinating because I've seen them on your Instagram profile, and they have so many different meanings. So, um, where do you find them from, and what is the significance of some of these paintings? Can you give us some examples for the people who might not have seen them on your Instagram?
Yeah, so for me, I was always looking at things like a artistic point of view because
Right.
like when I think about sexuality, I think of like sex as art.
Uh-huh.
But I think sometimes they were getting like the wrong, message. So I think I have to be careful about that.
Yeah.
But I find them all over Instagram.
Yeah, and also too, this goes back to what you were saying earlier when we were first chatting a few minutes ago, how other countries, like for example, you go back to the European medieval times or such, or Renaissance, you find that they had the naked statues, David, Michelangelo, and etc. But here we don't see things like that. So, do you, from your perspective, us as Americans, are we maybe naive in that aspect that people here don't see that as like, for example, in this case, like Europeans would because they're already, I guess, ingrained in that from birth on?
Yeah, I think it's really sad how, okay, for example, my
Yeah.
sister last night was watching the show that's based in Europe.
Uh-huh.
They showed a scene and I was like, oh, like they would not have showed that in America because it was a scene sexually where we saw more than we'd normally see, you know?
Ah,
Yeah, but I didn't
interesting.
think there's anything wrong with that. And it was like an empowering show for women, which was cool how that's so many, how that's like it's like a trend now in different industries, which I think is great.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's a big problem here because we are very sexually repressed and sexually like hypersexual, because think about it, how are we marketed to using sex with all
Mm-hmm.
the companies?
Yeah. And also, I think unfairly kind of exploiting women with take it to like Sports Illustrated or swimsuit model or, even Miss America pageant. Like it's always about glorifying like the skinny minis having to like have a 6 foot tall woman who's like 90 pounds, looks anorexic, but that's supposed to be the art of like beauty. And whereas if you have a woman who maybe some guys would think is very attractive and sexy because they have curves, then most of the media and Hollywood celebrity like kind of frown upon that and say, well, she looks kind of overweight, she could lose a little body fat percentage. I think personally they're more unfair to women than they are on men. I think men get more of a pass because you'll see, and just for example, like you can use any actors you could think of, Seth Rogen, Will Ferrell. Most women might not find them attractive, but they have what's called that dad bod. You've heard of that, where
Mm-hmm.
the beer belly and maybe balding, and that's okay. So I don't know. I mean, do you see that as a kind of a unfair balance sometimes that women have to try a little harder and work harder, whereas men don't have to?
Yeah, and I think that's BS. Because the thing is like I had a woman tell me the other day, she said, listen, the reason why my sex life sucks is because number one, he didn't want to work on it. And she told
Mm.
me number two was the fact that she's really into fitness and proving herself, and he wasn't. And
Ah,
so
yep.
I agree with you in the sense of like that. I guess that's a double standard or something.
Double
But
standard.
that's,
That's what I was
yeah,
looking
that is
for.
so messed up in our society because, um, looks, it's not a vanity thing. It's a health thing.
Yeah.
Like you look healthy, that's a sign of wow, you have vitality, you're healthy.
Yeah, it's such a great point. How, again, that goes to what I do with personal training and fitness. I think I mentioned to you before, as a personal trainer, you really become almost like a secret partner where they're giving you some things they wouldn't say publicly. And one of those things is that my doctor told me to come to you because they said that this might help my sex life. And they kind of like are embarrassed. I'm totally, I'm like you, I'm just like opening up saying, hey, don't worry. It's not it's something to laugh about. It's definitely, scientific. It's endorphin building, it's stress reducing, it's blood pressure, heart rate, and everything else. So it goes hand in hand. You're right. And in terms of like here in this country, and again, just kind of looking at it as our perspective, do you think that how do we rate in terms of we've talked about this before, like porn, for example. I think I've shared with you one of my clients who is addicted to porn. And
Mm-hmm.
is that something, for example, pornography, is that something that you believe we should not encourage for people to watch? Because is it counterintuitive, counterproductive to, I always am unfair. I always generally say men watch porn, but I know women do too. But do you think that that doesn't really necessarily help men and women, or do you think this is something that could be used as a tool? And do you give advice that maybe that's something that could help out?
I mean, my thing is like, this is the same thing with the whole vibrator issue.
Yeah.
I think it's there's so much shame around sexuality as it is that I personally think that like I don't judge people when they tell me they watch it or they have a. But the thing that I always am concerned about is when someone tells me it's a problem. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've had several people open up to me recently and say, yeah, it's kind of a problem.
Mm.
That's when I think it's an issue. But yeah, I mean, it definitely does affect you. And think about it, like this is what I've been noticing recently in our society. People are addicted to dopamine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because dopamine, I think you and I've talked about this.
That was one
Dopamine,
recent. Yep,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah. We took,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in terms of,
Remember that.
social media, sugar,
Good point.
caffeine.
Yep.
Caffeine is something that I'm always working on getting rid of.
Very
But
good point. Yeah.
yeah, so I think that that's something people need to realize is like, are you watching porn multiple times a day? That's kind of an issue.
Yeah, no, you're right. It becomes an addiction, just like anything else. Like, I think I mentioned that to my client when he was telling me. He's a young guy; he's only early 20s, and I think kind of from there, what you and I didn't talk about was where it delved into something different. Because then, after that, I found out that not only was he watching porn, but he opened up and told me he was watching more gay porn. And so he was asking me, "Does that mean that I'm gay, or do you think I'm got gay tendencies?" And you're the expert. I should have come to you and asked you because this is pretty recent. In fact, now I'm thinking about it, I need to put you guys in touch. But generalizing that, not knowing him, of course, but just if this was a general question, is it normal, do you think, for most people to watch both sexes and be curious or whatever? Or is that something just completely against the grain and just say, don't try to look at that? That's not right if that's not your orientation. I mean, do you go into that with your clients as well, Haley?
Yeah, I don't think that makes a person gay, right? I think
Yeah.
because I've talked about this with people too. I think
Yeah.
it's like if you act on it, that would probably mean maybe. But I
Yeah.
also think again that goes back to shaming men because think about it, women like they're not judged for being with other women
Right.
if even
Right.
if they're straight, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But men, there's that hard line of no, um, you're definitely the straight or gay, right?
Yeah, yeah, it becomes very, very generalized, I think, like, and just unfairly. And I think that's why too, Haley, I've met many gay men and trained a lot of gay guys, especially here in Atlanta. And because, we're very open now and it's not like 20, 30 years ago in the dark ages, and I think that's great that they can open up and be more kind of just, not in the closet, so to speak. Because I think, would you say that if you were doing your business, say 20, 30 years ago, and there were some, let's say, lesbians you were working with, that might be harder for them to admit to you or tell you that they are versus today, don't you think?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that part of your coaching too, Haley? Do you go into when you're working with, let's say, a lesbian client? How does that look different with sexuality, or is it? Maybe it's the same, like when you're giving your coaching advice on that.
I mean, it's pretty much the same. It all goes
Yeah.
back to the meat of the speak up for your needs.
Yeah, yeah, because if you remember, you and I, we did that conference three-way video blog with that other gentleman who is a gay fitness instructor, and it was really interesting to see his perspective on it because you get a gay man's perspective, you get the professional from you, a woman's viewpoint of
Hmm.
helping and doing what you do, and it's really just interesting to see kind of like a synthesis of how that all kind of comes together. It's so cool. And I'm so fascinated, Haley, with what you do with your programming since I talked to you last month, because I looked at the calendar, I was like, gosh, wow. What is in store for now? We're coming into the spring/summer season. How is your programming going, and what do you have going on?
Yeah, for me, it's just keep doing the same thing. I think I talked to you about, I can't remember whether we said I wanted to do a few live events.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to hold off on that.
Okay. Okay.
Just focus on building online presence, continue working with clients.
Yeah.
Building my YouTube. Yeah.
Great, great, excellent. Well, speaking of which, YouTube and all the other forms of media, let's go ahead and plug that. How do people get a chance to listen to you, to subscribe to Your Guide to Love, and contact you directly if they have questions?
Yeah, so I am Your Guide to Love on YouTube. I am Your Guide to Love on my podcast, on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, and Haley.Helveston on Instagram.
Excellent, excellent. Very good, Haley. Before I let you go, something I'm doing new with my video blogs recently, I'm asking everybody at the end of the video is to give 3 pieces of advice, 3 suggestions, that just 3 talking points, 3 bullet points. Anybody watching right now, how they can, basically improve, in your case, improve their sex life and improve not being ashamed of their body. Just 3 bullet points, 3 kind of main primary focused, statements of do this, and do this. And what would those be?
Oh, that's great. Okay, so I would say the first one is, and this goes for every area of our lives, right? If you don't speak up for your needs, who will? And then the next one would be, like, living a turned on life is really about living a life that you feel alive and you feel excited about.
Right.
And do you feel that way? And if not, what can you change? And then I would say setting boundaries is a form of self-love.
Perfect. Wow. Awesome. I love that. That's excellent. Nice. Good, good, good. Very good way to kind of wrap it up there and summarize it there with a nice bow at the end, Haley. Very good. I always enjoy these so much with you, Haley, and thank you so much, as always, for your time. These video blogs with you just fly by way too fast, so we'll let you get going, and we're going to get your contact information on the screen as we fade to black. And otherwise, Haley, have a wonderful Friday, great weekend to you, and we'll see you next month on this.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thanks again, Haley. Take care.